that God has for us. So recently, I've been watching a TV show called The Bear. Has anyone watched that? Yes. So I'm a bit late to the party on this one. I know some of you have heard of it. I see your heads nodding. But it's this comedy drama television series that has an authentic portrayal of the restaurant and culinary world. It started as a bit of a love letter after the COVID-19 pandemic. It deals really well with the restaurant scene and also with trauma and grief. It's known for its deep character development. It has 21 Primetime Emmy Awards, 5 Golden Globe Awards, and Carmy Barazzato is the main character. He's played by Jeremy Allen White, and he's this award-winning chef who returns to Chicago after his brother dies by suicide to take up and manage the brother's original beef Italian sandwich shop. So Carmy is a really talented chef, and as he returns from the French Laundry back to Chicago, he decides to transform this restaurant into a fine dining establishment. And so the series, there's 4 seasons. I did check, and there is going to be a 5th, so get excited. But it follows the story of this restaurant and these chefs, the community they create through this experience of dealing with the trauma and grief, and also of dealing with creating a restaurant. There's one scene in particular from season 3 that stood out for me, and that's when Carmy attends a funeral. But it's a funeral for a restaurant that is closing its doors after many years, and it's a restaurant that trained him and many of the fine chefs in the area and beyond. So they all go for the last service that will ever be offered at this restaurant. And he is sitting with all these high-profile celebrity chefs. If you watch any of the cooking shows, you would know some of them. And as they're sitting together, and they've gathered around wonderful food, the chef of this fictional restaurant Ever, who's played by Olivia Colman, who is wonderful, stands up to offer one more talk about her restaurant Ever. And she moves from speaking just about this place to talking more about restaurants in general and their work, some encouragement for their work as chefs. And what she says might surprise you, because she says the food is not what people remember. It's the people. And she begins to talk about how over the years she has seen the regulars, the children, grow into teens and into adults, and it's been her privilege to create this place where people come in to celebrate, where people come in after moments of suffering. It is a wonderful thing to nurture this community. And so she ends the restaurant funeral on a hopeful note. She offers that encouragement to the chefs and to restaurants as nurturers and as magic makers in a world that increasingly needs more nurturing and magical spaces. Well, that speech sounded a little bit like a sermon to me, and it got me thinking about my work and your work and the work of the church over the millennia. The invitation to be a space that is different than what the world offers. The invitation to be a space that is magical, that is encouraging, that is supportive, that offers a breath from the Spirit of the risen Lord. Our passages for today come from 2 apostles, Paul and Peter. And they write to different communities. Paul is writing to the Gentile population, to a church that he planted in Galatia. Peter to the surviving community in the holy city of Jerusalem. And both of them offer letters of encouragement. Paul does tend to call them fools, but ultimately it's encouraging. So Paul says to this Galatians community that they need to remember why they gather in the first place. Turns out they've been listening to false teachers. They've been falling back into the ways of the world. He lists those ways before we get to the list of the fruit of the Spirit. You'll remember some of those ways of the world: envy, division, enmity, immorality, strife. And he says, don't place your hope in the institutions and the structures found outside of your faith. Don't do it. Instead, remember that the new life that you have found as a community in the risen Christ, remember the fruits of this, the fruits of the Spirit: love and joy, peace, patience, faithfulness, kindness, gentleness, generosity, self-control. And then in our reading for today, we have Peter. He's also offering his recommendations to the followers of the way, and they are not Gentiles, this group that's gathered in Jerusalem, but they've been distracted by many things. And again, he writes to encourage them to make a different choice, a better choice than following after the ways of the world. He asks them to reclaim their participation in, and I love this phrase, the divine nature of things. Remember that, the divine nature of things. And so he says, make every effort to support that faith, that choice with excellence, excellence with knowledge, knowledge with self-control, self-control with endurance, endurance with godliness, and godliness with mutual affection, and mutual affection with love. And if you mess up, go easy on yourself. Don't forget the cleansing, the grace that Jesus offers us. So with these letters, with these speeches, the writers speak to populations who need to be reminded that their community offers some magic for the world, a better choice than the institutions and their struggles. They uphold the mystical experience of the risen Lord, the possibility of participation in the divine. But then they say, that is your choice to remember this community, and that your choice to do this involves self-control. So recently I was on a visit, and as I was visiting with one of you, I met an Orthodox rabbi, and he would not shake my hand. And I didn't really understand this, so I inquired. I stuck my hand out. Hello, nice to meet you. Oh, I won't shake your hand. And I said, oh, is that connected to the holiday? Is that a part of the ritual? It was Rosh Hashanah. And very nicely, he said, no, and we both kind of chuckled that, oh, it's because my wife will get mad, you know. But he said he has made the choice to follow his faith by restricting touch to the people of the same gender only. That's some self-control. Now, those of us in more mainline or progressive communities, we can tend to turn up our noses at self-control or just toss the baby out with the bathwater. And it's true that when I did a quick Google search for podcasts on self-control and Christianity, I couldn't find any of my typical go-tos. what I found more were episodes from more conservative traditions that were talking mostly about sexual temptation. But also I saw information on biblical dieting plans and parenting according to Proverbs. That might have been my logarithm, the parenting thing. But instead of tossing the baby out with the bathwater, Paul and Peter encourage us as a community that has the choice to make magic that is different than what the world offers, that has the choice to participate in the life of the risen Lord, that has the choice to be a part of the divine nature now in our days. That self-control is something we ought to consider. And it's not always or totally or really about the restriction of bodily impulses or self-discipline for ego control. Actually, the Greek word for self-control is translated as strength, as ability, as force, as might. So that means that when we pass the self-control of Christ, we sing about it coming down at the end of the service. We are saying that there is a strength that goes beyond all our striving, that holds us upright. It is a strength, it is a might, it is an ability that holds all things together. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the living of these days. Grant us self-control. For self-control in Christ is that solid, still rod that runs within us, pulsing with that reminder of who we are and whose we are. And it is work to remember this, it is work to choose this, and it is a radical work of the divine nature that uses self-control for us to remain in hard places for the common good. It could be that self-control is the magic we might choose for our world today. Recently, I read an article by data analysis named Ryan Burge. He's really interesting. He's on Twitter, he's on Instagram, but I get him through the Substack called Graphs About Religion. So he's fantastic, particularly if you're into numbers, but even if you're not, follow him. He's a professor of political science, but he was also a pastor. He is a pastor. He doesn't have a church, but he's in the American Baptist tradition. And he does really interesting work, posting about religious affiliation, political ideology, demographic changes. He's been on 60 Minutes, and he's one of the leading data journalists in his field, which is the changing religious landscape of America. Some of his really interesting hot topics include details around that growing number of Americans who identify as religiously unaffiliated, and this more recent, nascent hope that it is Gen Z returning to the pews that will have the church experience more vigor. He spends a lot of time at the intersection of religious identity and political ideology, getting down into the details of what sometimes media presents in ways that are less granular. One of his more interesting findings is around education and religiosity. Burge challenges the common assumption that higher education leads people away from religion. Instead, he presents data that shows less educated individuals are actually more likely to be nuns. And he challenges the church. So, his most recent Substack article had a headline, that got me clicking to read right away. And in this article, he makes a simple and straightforward claim, and it is this: highly active religious people are happier than non-religious people. What about that? Do you agree? In the article, he looks at hard data, 2023-24 Pew Religious Landscape Survey, to show that people who attend religious services, who actually come to church with regularity, that they are significantly happier than people who don't attend. Those of us who are paid to be here might be able to attest to that. If you attend a house of worship multiple times per week, you report as being very happy at a rate nearly twice that of those who never attend. And this is across age groups. The largest gap between religious and non-religious individuals in the younger generations was millennials. So if you are a millennial who's coming to church every week, you are 2 times as likely to be happy. I see some smiles from our millennials out there. You're like, I know this. That's why I'm here, Jamie. And it's the same across denominations, okay? Something for us to think about too. It's actually a little lower, the statistics in the main line, but not much. Participation in a religious community dries up your sense of happiness. You do have to come in person. The online numbers are not as strong here. But there is an importance of the in-person religious community, of making the self-disciplined choice for that fosters our well-being. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But let's think about that. The choices that we make daily, the self-control that it takes, that might move us to create magic, grace, mutual affection, love, endurance, perseverance, joy, hope, gentleness, and self-control. So back to the bear. And the scenes from the restaurant is just incredible. I've never spent time in the back of a restaurant in the kitchen area. I was a barista, but never worked in the kitchen. Maybe some of you have, and this doesn't come as news to you. But in the Bear, they're going for this Michelin star, and so everything they choose is impeccable. From the flowers on the tables, to the way the fork is placed, to the attention to the guests with food allergies. And that's just front of house. And the back of the house, it's the timing of the pasta dish, that violet petal on the dessert plate, the clean of the chef coats. There's even that tiny drop of the basil emulsion in the plating of a dish. All of these minute details, all of these tiny things, these small choices, they combine for a magical experience in the restaurant of being nurtured, of being loved. We make so many choices as we go about our days. We choose what to watch. I recommend The Bear. We choose what to eat. I eat gluten-free. I don't necessarily recommend that unless you have to. We choose whether or not to add strength exercises to our exercise regime. I am supposed to choose this. We choose to laugh at a joke. We choose to address something hard head on. We choose to recycle or not. We choose to grow flowers or let them die. We choose to have pets. We choose to visit a friend. We choose to touch a hand stretched out before us. We choose to pray. And on Sunday mornings in the occasional Zooms, we choose church. What if the life of the risen Christ into which we are invited to experience the fruit of the Spirit is about these tiny choices that we make every day? To respond and not react, but to respond with generosity, kindness, gentleness, patience. To respond in faithfulness, in pursuing peace, and being joyful. To center on love. And what if our strength, our ability to persist in all of these choices day after day, failure after failure, what if this is the magical makeup of that final fruit? It turns out the root word of the Greek for self-control is the same used for the name of God when we call God the Almighty. The fruit of self-control within us is the imprint of the Almighty, the still rod at the center of our being, nurturing in us the choices of the fruit of the Spirit for our communities, for ourselves, and for us all. To God be the glory, time without end. Amen.